If I told you my wife was sneaking into my son's room every night, would you believe me? Neither did I until I saw it with my own eyes. What I'm about to tell you isn't just betrayal. It's the kind of truth that splits a man's soul in half and makes him question what family even means. My name's Scott Jefferson, and this is the story of how love turned into the darkest kind of war. If you're watching this right now, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing this story from. I want to know when you listen to this old man's revenge, when you hear what they did to me. Do you think I went too far, or not far enough? The night I first saw her shadow slip out of our bed, I didn't think to follow. I thought the safest thing was ignorant sleep through the little cuts that make a man bleed slow. I thought that because I'd been a soldier and a widower long enough to know sometimes the quiet is mercy. I was wrong. My name is Scott. I'm 67 years old. I live in a weathered shotgun house on a side street in Charleston where the oaks drag their Spanish moss like old curtains. I used to wake to the smell of Linda's coffee and the sound of her humming. I used to come home from a long day and find her fixing the porch light without complaint. She died 10 years ago, and the place where her laugh lived became a kind of museum, photos in frames, a chair that still creaks the right way. For a long time I kept it that way. Grief has a tidy face when you let it sit untouched. Then Vanessa moved in. Vanessa was 22 years my junior, which I'll admit sounded scandalous the first time I told a buddy about it. She had the sort of easy smile that could polish the rust off a man and hands that knew how to fix more than a leaking sink. She'd been a nurse at the clinic uptown, the kind of woman who brings warm towels and remembers which neighbors like their tea week. When she looked at me, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a decade, not just comfort, but the ridiculous hope of again. I married her in a small ceremony under a magnolia tree, and for a while it felt like the world had given me a second chance. My son Marcus. He's 25, didn't see it that way. Marcus grew up with his mother's laugh as a soundtrack too, but children carry loss differently. He'd been a teenager when Linda got sick. He had watched us wrestle with hospital beds and late-night whispers. He'd learned to shoulder things I couldn't. When I brought Vanessa home, Marcus folded himself into silence. He was polite. Nobody had to teach that, but cold, in the way a closed window is cold there, but shutting out the light. He stayed in his room more. He left for work before I was awake and came back after Vanessa had already put the kettle on. We ate like 3 separate families at the same table. I told myself it was adjustment, that monsters of the past were finally being dealt with, that Marcus needed time. Maybe that was true. Maybe I wanted to believe it so badly, I ignored things a man should not have ignored. Vanessa took to the house the way people take to warmth. She planted herbs by the kitchen window, learned my coffee preference, left sticky notes on the freezer with little hearts. She called me Scott, like she was reminding herself she had his whole name, like there was something sacred about saying it properly. I liked those small courtesies. They felt like soft repairs. The porch light got fixed. The roof leak got mended. I slept easier. But at night, small things started to fold in on themselves. It began with the excuses. "I can't sleep," she'd say, rolling over, and her foot would find mine, as if that simple contact might tether our lives against whatever woke her. "I'm just up for a minute," she would tell me when I asked if she needed water. On a Sunday, she'd get up and say she needed to check on the neighbor's dog. These were harmless things. Wives get up at night, I told myself. People go to the bathroom, grab a glass of water, check their phones. I'd watched 1,000 people do worse and stayed silent in my head because I did not want to be the man who spied on his home like a petty detective. Then Marcus started to look at me like I had betrayed him by loving again. He answered with clipped sentences. He flinched when Vanessa knocked too loud. The kid who used to race out to hug me at the end of a long trip, he now opened the door, nodded, and closed it. Little things, a bedroom lamp left on a plate left in the sink that shouldn't be there. Bigger things, a bag of cash I found rolled into a sock and an old shoebox, and Marcus's handwriting on the receipt. Not much money, but enough to say someone was stashing. My sleep began to shift. I woke earlier. Mornings seemed longer. There were nights I'd lie awake and listen to the house breathe. The HVAC hummed. The fridge clicked on, then off. The road noise softened to a faraway river, and then, about past 2 in the morning, the mattress would dip beside me. I'd pretend to sleep counting the small motions beneath the blankets, and then I'd hear the loose floorboard near the hall, the one Marcus's feet always hit when he ran from his room to the bathroom as a kid, and I'd watch the shape of Vanessa press back the covers and leave. Once or twice I followed her down the hall and stood at the doorway to Marcus's room, ready to clear my throat and assert my place. Only once did I catch a glimpse. The door cracked a sliver of shadow, and the curtain of the streetlight painting a bar across the carpet. She moved with care, like she didn't want to wake sleeping things. She stayed 5 or 10 minutes, came back, slipped into bed. On the outside, these were tiny motions, tender, even no crime. On the inside, they felt like tiny knives. I told myself, don't be that man, the man who storms a marriage with a torch. The man who can't breathe unless he knows the whole hour-by-hour truth of a woman's night. I'd seen too much of the world to think a marriage is a courtroom. Still, the worry grew claws. We had lost so much already. Linda's name sat between us at every holiday. A photograph of her on the mantel caught light when the sun rose, and I would sometimes reach out to touch the glass, as if touching her might translate what I had become, a man who believed in practicalities, mortgage taxes, the grocery list more than fairy tales. I had thought finding a new love was a practical healing. I hadn't expected to find myself cataloging every absence like a ledger. The thing about living long enough is you learn the sound of a house. You can tell when a floorboard cries because the seasons have shifted, and when it cries because somebody is carrying a secret. I heard the latter more nights than I cared to admit. My palms would sweat, and I would tell myself I was overreacting because husbands get possessive, because old men get jealous of youth. But the feeling in my gut, the soldier's sense that a formation is breaking, wouldn't let me go. So I began to notice the pattern: water glass bathroom light, 3 quiet steps down the hall, the door closed softly. The return, the muffled sigh as she eased back under the covers. It happened more evenings than not. Marcus began to come to dinner later. He stopped calling me at work. He stopped leaving his dirty dishes in the sink in a way that felt like rebellion and more like avoidance. One night, lying awake and watching the ceiling fan spin its slow, indifferent circles, I thought of Linda more than I had in months. Her hands, calloused kind, reached for mine in a dream I could not finish. I felt guilty for thinking about moving on, guilty for wanting warm bread and someone who could hear me breathe. And still the nights kept happening the same way. I told myself to be brave, to talk, to ask. But the thing about truth is, it has teeth. You can't pick it up with a napkin. You can't be gentle with it and expect it to keep its mouth shut. If I had known where she went at night, I would have burned every camera in this house before she could destroy us. I told myself I was imagining it. That's what old men do, right? We confuse echoes with danger, shadows with ghosts. Our minds start stitching patterns where there are only loose threads. But some sounds don't come from memory. It started the following week. Every night, just past 2, I'd hear the soft press of a footstep on the hallway floor. Not heavy, not hurried, just careful, deliberate, like someone walking in their own house but afraid to wake what was sleeping there. Then a pause. Then the sound of a door closing. Not a slam, just the faintest click. The kind that says you weren't meant to hear this. I would open my eyes in the dark and see Vanessa's side of the bed, empty, her pillow still warm. My first instinct was to call out. My second was to wait. I lay there holding my breath, counting the seconds until the soft creak of the floor returned and she slipped quietly back beneath the covers. Sometimes her hands were cold. Sometimes she smelled faintly of Marcus's cologne, woodsy, sharp, the kind I never wore. I didn't say anything. What could I say? Honey, where do you go every night? That would sound crazy coming from a man my age. Paranoid, possessive. The kind of thing a tired husband invents when the years stretch out and the house gets too quiet. Vanessa gave me no reason to accuse her. In daylight, she was everything a man like me could ask for. She made my breakfast, kept my pills in a neat little case folded. My shirts, rubbed lotion on my arthritic hands without being asked. She'd lean against the doorframe while I read the paper, teasing me for still reading print like it was 1990. "You're a vintage man," she'd laugh. I'd grin, pretending that was something to be proud of. And yet, sometimes kindness has a rhythm too perfect to trust. Marcus, meanwhile, had turned into someone I barely recognized. His eyes looked hollow, like he hadn't slept in days. He started skipping meals, staying locked in his room even when Vanessa cooked his favorite pot roast. When I tried to talk to him, he would mutter something like, "I'm fine, Dad," then vanish behind that closed door. The sound of that latch clicking shut felt like rejection every single time. One evening I knocked on his door. "Marcus, can we talk for a minute?" He didn't answer. When I pushed the door open, he was sitting on his bed, staring at the wall, earbuds, and pretending not to notice me. The room smelled like stale coffee and something heavier, fear, maybe, or guilt. "Son, you're not yourself lately," I said. "You need to tell me if something's wrong." He yanked out one earbud and said flatly, "Nothing's wrong, Dad, just tired." Then he stood up and left the room without looking at me. It hit me like a punch. He wasn't angry. He was ashamed, but ashamed of what that night Vanessa brought me, chamomile tea. "For your nerves," she said sweetly. "You've been tense lately." I looked at her hands as she set the mug down, perfectly manicured, no tremor, the hands of a woman who slept soundly at night. "Guess I'm just getting old," I muttered. She smiled, brushing my shoulder. "You're not old, Scott. You're classic." And she kissed me on the cheek. God help me, that little kiss almost made me believe her. The next morning I met Reggie at the diner off Broad Street. We'd been through the same dust storms in Iraq 25 years ago, different battles, same hell. He was the one man I could talk to without pride getting in the way. He noticed something was off before I even said a word. "You look like a man who's been sleeping next to a loaded gun," he said. I chuckled. "Maybe I am. What's going on?" I stirred my coffee for too long before answering. "You ever feel like you're missing something obvious? Like everyone in your house knows a secret but you?" He leaned back, folding his arms. "You talking about Vanessa?" I sighed. "I don't know. She's good to me. Real good. But she disappears at night sometimes. Says she can't sleep. I hear doors. I hear Marcus's room close. And the boy, he's changed Reg. He avoids me like I'm the enemy." Reggie looked at me for a long time, eyes sharp, calm as ever. "You remember Fallujah," he said quietly. "How could I forget? You remember what I told you when we were pinned down in that alley?" I nodded. "Don't trust what looks safe. Trust your gut." He pointed a finger at me. "Exactly. You got that same look now. I don't know what's going on in your house, brother, but I'll tell you this, evil don't always knock loud. Sometimes it just whispers. So keep your eyes open." When I drove home that evening, his words followed me like headlights in the rearview mirror. At dinner, Vanessa asked how Reggie was doing. I told her fine. She smiled and said, "Good. You need friends who remind you how lucky you are." Lucky. That word hit me wrong. After dinner, she washed the dishes while humming "Ain't No Sunshine," the same tune Linda used to hum. I stood in the doorway watching her hands move through the soap bubbles, graceful, efficient. She turned and caught me staring. "You okay, sweetheart?" "Yeah," I lied, "just tired." Later that night, I sat alone in the living room, TV flickering without sound. The hallway light was off. From the couch, I could see the faint reflection of the corridor in the glass of a framed photograph, Marcus at 16, grinning, holding his fishing rod. That reflection showed movement now, a shadow sliding past, then gone. My heart pounded like I was back in a combat zone. That was the moment I decided I needed to know. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Around midnight, when Vanessa's breathing steadied beside me, I slipped out of bed, went to the garage, and pulled out an old box labeled tech stuff. Inside were a few tools, an unused motion camera I'd bought years ago for deer watching, and a handful of screws. My hands shook as I wired it up, nothing fancy, just a small lens tucked behind the framed photo in the hallway, another in the corner of the living room. It wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was survival of my sanity, if nothing else. By 2 a.m., everything was silent again.
I waited until morning, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat down with my laptop to check the feed.
The first few minutes showed nothing, just the soft flicker of shadows, the rhythm of a sleeping house. Then, as the timestamp hit 2:14, I saw it movement, a door opening. That night when I checked the footage, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The footage started like any other quiet night, grainy, colorless, the house breathing in its sleep. I remember holding my coffee mug with both hands just to keep them from shaking. The timestamp in the corner flicked to 2:03 a.m. Then she appeared. Vanessa. She eased out of our bedroom like a ghost who'd learned how to open doors. She was wearing her silk robe, the cream one I bought her for Christmas, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender. For a moment, she just stood in the hallway listening. You could tell by the tilt of her head that she wanted to make sure I was asleep. Then she moved.
Not toward the kitchen. Not toward the bathroom. She moved down the hallway, slow, barefoot, deliberate,
until she reached Marcus's door. She paused. Her hand hovered over the handle for a second as if weighing something, then she turned it. The door opened just enough for her to slip inside, and then nothing. The camera kept rolling, but the hallway stayed empty. 2 minutes, 5, 10, 20. The door didn't open again. My coffee went cold in my hands. I sat there in the glow of the laptop screen, trying to breathe, trying to reason. Maybe she's checking on him, I thought. Maybe he's sick or she's talking to him about something private. Except Marcus was 25, not 10. And what kind of conversation needs to happen at 2 in the morning behind a closed door with the lights off? I shut the laptop. My pulse was hammering so loud it drowned out the refrigerator hum. I stared at the dark window, half expecting to see my own reflection shaking his head in disbelief. I told myself I didn't see what I saw. The mind plays tricks at my age. Shadows lie. Maybe she just went in for a second and I missed her leaving. Cameras glitch all the time, right? But the pit in my stomach said otherwise. When dawn crept through the blinds, I still hadn't slept. I climbed back into bed before she woke up, pretending to be half asleep when she stirred. Vanessa turned toward me, her hair tangled, her voice soft. "Morning, honey," she whispered, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. "You were out cold last night." "Guess so," I murmured. She smiled, the same sweet, easy smile she'd worn since the day I met her. "I'll make pancakes. You want blueberries or banana?" "Whatever's fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She hummed as she went downstairs. I sat up and watched her walk away, same robe, same gentle sway of her hips, same woman who made my coffee every morning and folded my shirts with love. Nothing in her movements hinted at guilt or shame. When Marcus came down for breakfast, he didn't meet my eyes. He looked pale, his jaw tight, shoulders hunched like a man waiting for judgment. "Morning, son," I said. He nodded, eyes fixed on his plate. "Morning." Vanessa served him pancakes, ruffling his hair playfully. "You didn't sleep much again, huh?" she said. He flinched, not much, just a flicker, but enough for me to notice. "No, ma'am, just couldn't." "Ma'am," he used to call her Vanessa. I watched their small, silent exchange, the way her hand lingered a second too long near his arm, the way his entire body stiffened like someone bracing for impact. My mouth went dry. "Marcus," I said, forcing calm into my tone. "You got plans today," he shrugged. "Probably head to the garage, maybe work on the truck." "Need help?" He shook his head quickly. "No, I'm good." Vanessa smiled as if to fill the space he left. "You should rest, Scott. You've been worrying too much lately. You know stress isn't good for your heart." She said it with care, but underneath her words, something sharp glinted. I didn't know if I was hearing it or imagining it. I spent the day pretending to read the newspaper, pretending to nap, pretending to be the fool she clearly thought I was. Inside, my mind was spinning like a loaded chamber. I wanted to ask her to grab her shoulders and shout, "What are you doing in that room every night?" But the soldier in me knew better. You don't attack without recon. So that evening, while she was out in the garden watering her herbs, I went to the attic and found the old wall clock that hadn't worked in years. It was a heavy thing, oak-frame, glass front, the kind of antique that belonged to another century. Perfect cover. I brought it down, cleaned the face, and carefully tucked a new micro camera inside right where the pendulum used to hang. I drilled a small hole for the lens and positioned it so it faced Marcus's bed. From the outside, it looked harmless, a sentimental decoration from a father trying to fix up his son's room. By the time Vanessa came back in, I had it mounted. She smiled when she saw it. "You fixed the old clock." "Yeah," I said, forcing a grin. "Figured it'd be nice for Marcus to have something that still keeps time." She kissed my cheek. "You and your old things, that's why I love you." If she noticed the tremor in my hand, she didn't show it. That night I sat in bed pretending to watch a baseball game on mute while she scrolled through her phone. Every so often she glanced at me and smiled like nothing in the world could be wrong. When she turned off the lamp, I waited, listened, counted the minutes until the mattress lifted beneath her and the hallway swallowed her up again. This time I didn't follow. I just reached for my phone and opened the app. The new camera feed glowed to life, black and white, silent, merciless. I told myself it was just a precaution. Just proof that my mind was still sharp, that I wasn't losing grip on reality. I didn't know then that what I was about to see would carve the truth so deep into my life that I'd never sleep peacefully again. That camera was about to show me the one truth I wish I had never seen. It was a little past 2 when the camera came alive. The screen on my phone glowed in the dark like a wound I couldn't stop touching. I'd been lying awake for an hour, waiting for the moment she'd move. And then there it was. Vanessa stirred. She sat up, hair spilling over her shoulders, robe tied loose at the waist. I could almost hear the soft creak of the floorboards through the screen as she left our bedroom. The hallway camera caught her ghosting down the corridor again, barefoot, careful, practiced. But this time I had another angle waiting for her. The feed switched to Marcus's room. He was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, elbows on his knees, like a man waiting for judgment. The door opened. Vanessa slipped inside, closing it gently behind her. For a moment she stood still, just watching him. Then she crossed the room and sat beside him. They didn't speak, not that I could hear, but when she reached out and touched his cheek, he didn't pull away. I felt something crack in my chest. She leaned closer. He looked up, and then, God help me, they kissed. Not a quick, nervous mistake, not confusion. It was deliberate, familiar, her hand behind his neck, his arms circling her waist. I froze, staring at the screen the way a man might stare at a live grenade that just rolled into his lap. My brain couldn't find the words for what my eyes were seeing. My wife wrapped around my son like lovers in a cheap motel. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to storm down that hallway, to rip the door off its hinges and end it right there. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Something colder than rage settled in me. A kind of stillness I hadn't felt since Iraq, when everything slowed down and survival meant waiting for the right second to breathe. They lay down on the bed, still tangled in each other. I looked away, but the image was already burned behind my eyes. I felt the room tilt. My throat went dry. I wanted to vomit, to punch a hole through the wall, to disappear. I had survived war, loss, and loneliness. I whispered to the dark, but nothing could prepare me for this kind of betrayal. It wasn't just what they did, it was who they were. The woman I had let into my home, the son I had raised with every ounce of patience and love I had left in this old body, they had joined hands to tear down the last good thing left in me. I don't remember closing the phone, only the silence after. The house seemed to breathe in unison with my heartbreak. Every clock ticked louder. Every second felt like a hammer driving a nail into something sacred. I sat there for hours, replaying the footage in my mind, even though I didn't need to. Once you've seen something like that, it plays itself. At dawn, Vanessa returned to our bed. The mattress dipped. She smelled faintly of Marcus's cologne again. My stomach turned. She reached for me, curling against my shoulder. "You're awake," she murmured. I pretended to be half asleep. "Just thinking," I said, "about what life I managed." She smiled into my chest. "Then stop worrying about it so much." Her warmth against me felt wrong, every heartbeat a lie. I wanted to shove her away, but instead I lay still, letting her think she still had a husband. When she finally drifted off, I stared at the ceiling. I thought of Linda, my first wife, her laugh, her strength, her quiet grace. She'd trusted me to protect our family, and I had failed, not on a battlefield this time, but under my own roof. By breakfast, I had my mask back on. Vanessa hummed while frying eggs, the picture of domestic bliss. Marcus came down late, avoiding my eyes. "Morning," he muttered. I nodded. "Morning." Vanessa slid a plate in front of him. "Eat, sweetheart. You need your energy." "Sweetheart." My blood went cold. He gave her a small nod, like a servant obeying a queen. I sat across from them, watching the small tremor in his hand as he lifted his fork. He couldn't meet my gaze. Maybe guilt was clawing at him too. But guilt doesn't unmake a sin. They chatted about errands, about a leaking faucet, about nothing at all. The world went on turning, pretending it hadn't just imploded. I smiled when Vanessa looked my way, even cracked a joke about how the coffee was too strong. She laughed, the same bright laugh that used to heal me. Now it cut like glass. When Marcus left for work, she leaned across the table, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're quiet today." "Just tired," I said. "Didn't sleep much." "You should take your pills before your nap," she replied. "I'll be out for a few hours." I nodded and she left. The moment the door closed, I slumped forward, gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. I wanted to scream, but even my voice felt stolen. I replayed the footage again because part of me needed to know it wasn't a nightmare, that what I saw was real, every second of it, the way she touched him, the way he let her. And that was when I realized I couldn't confront them. Not yet. I needed more than outrage. I needed proof and a plan, because when a man loses everything, the only thing he has left is how he chooses to end it. And yet I didn't confront them that night, because I needed proof and a plan. For the next few days I played my part, the gentle husband, the forgiving father, the harmless old man too tired to notice the cracks under his own roof. Vanessa fluttered around the kitchen like nothing had changed, still pressing my shirts, still laying out my pills beside my coffee cup every morning. Marcus came and went quiet, stiff eyes lowered. And I smiled through it all. Every good morning, honey, every sleep well, felt like a needle sliding under my skin. But I didn't flinch, because war teaches you one thing, above all else: you can't win what you don't understand. Each night I collected footage, every movement, every glance, every whisper that passed between them when they thought I wasn't looking. I saved the files on a private drive, backed them up on a thumbstick I hid inside Linda's old Bible on the mantel. A strange kind of sanctuary, I guess. Every morning I told myself I'd take it to the police. Every night I told myself I wasn't ready. The betrayal hurt, yes, but what kept me awake wasn't anger. It was confusion. Why? Why would my son? Marcus had always been a good boy, stubborn, sure. Hard-headed like his old man, but good. He'd been there when Linda died, holding my arm in that hospital hallway while I told myself to be strong. He'd helped me rebuild that house after the hurricane took half the roof. He was my reason to keep going when loneliness became a second skin. So how did it come to this? What had Vanessa whispered into him that made him cross that line? One evening I went out back with a beer and stared at the fence I'd built with Marcus 10 years ago. We'd measured every plank together. I remembered him 16 years old, laughing, telling me he wanted to be just like me one day. That memory twisted inside my chest until it was hard to breathe. Later I drove out to meet Reggie again. The diner was half empty, the kind of quiet that feels suspicious. He took one look at me and said, "You got that haunted look again." I didn't answer right away, just stirred my coffee until the spoon clinked against the cup. Finally I said, "It's worse than I thought, Reg." He leaned in. "You find out something?" I nodded, throat dry. "I've got video evidence. Vanessa and Marcus, they're not just sneaking around. It's real, and it's been going on for a while." Reggie closed his eyes, shaking his head slowly. "Jesus, Scott. Yeah. What are you gonna do?" I took a breath that hurt going down. "That's the thing. I don't know. Part of me wants to burn it all down, drag 'em both out of the house, make 'em tell the world what they did. But another part, I just want to understand. I need to know what broke my boy. Reggie was quiet for a long moment, then he said, "You remember the code back in the service. You never let emotions decide your next move. You go by the mission." "This isn't war," I muttered. "The hell it isn't," he said firmly. "It's the same thing enemy inside the wire. You move too fast, you get sloppy. Let the system handle it." "The system," I scoffed. "You think the system gives a damn about an old man whose wife and son made a fool of him?" Reggie sighed. "Scott, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's safe. You go after them head on, you'll lose more than your pride. Think of your future, what's left of it." But pride wasn't the thing bleeding inside me. It was something deeper, older, a father's failure, a husband's humiliation. When I got home that night, the house was dark except for the lamp by the couch. Vanessa was curled up reading one of those glossy lifestyle magazines. She looked up smiling. "You're late." "Lost track of time with Reggie," I said, hanging my coat. She nodded. "You should have called. I made pot roast. I'll warm it up later." As I walked past, her perfume hit me, the same scent I'd caught in Marcus's room. I swallowed hard and went upstairs before my face could betray me. In my office, I opened the old photo album. Pictures of Linda, of Marcus at 5, at 10, at 16. There was one of the three of us at Myrtle Beach, Linda laughing as the wind blew her hat off. I touched her face through the plastic sleeve. "Linda," I whispered, voice trembling, "if you can hear me. I don't know how to save our boy anymore." The room stayed silent except for the low hum of the camera feed on my laptop. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., I checked the footage again. Nothing new, just the same quiet treachery, looping itself like a lullaby I couldn't escape. By morning, I thought I'd lost the ability to feel surprise, but life still had one knife left for me. I went to pay the electric bill online and saw something strange. Our joint savings account was lighter by nearly $20,000. I checked the records. The transfer had been made 2 days ago, authorized under Vanessa's name. Destination, a new account at a different bank. I stared at the numbers, pulse roaring in my ears. 20,000. That was the down payment I'd been saving for Marcus if he ever wanted to buy his own place. I called his workplace, the small auto shop downtown. A young guy answered, said Marcus hadn't shown up for a week. Quit suddenly. No notice. No explanation. That's when the pieces clicked. The late nights, the secrecy, the hidden money. They weren't just sneaking around. They were planning something bigger. It was the little things that gave them away. The unopened mail stacked on the counter. The whispering in the next room that stopped the second I walked in. The way Vanessa suddenly cared too much about paperwork, insurance renewals, power of attorney, joint ownership. She'd started leaving manila folders on the kitchen table like breadcrumbs she wanted me to follow, each labeled in her perfect handwriting: health coverage, medical consent, estate planning. One evening, she slid a crisp set of documents in front of me while I was watching the game. "Just sign these, sweetheart," she said lightly, brushing her fingers over my shoulder. "It's about your medical insurance, just an update. You know how they change policies every year." Her tone was sugar, her smile patient, but her eyes were measuring me. I looked down at the stack. 3 pages. My name printed neatly, my social security number typed right, her signature already at the bottom of the second page. The language was dense legal jargon dressed up as care. "You sure this isn't something the agent should go over with me?" I asked. She leaned down, kissed the top of my head. "Scott, baby, you worry too much. I already talked to them. It's just to make sure you're covered if anything ever happens to you. Please, I'd feel better if anything ever happens to you." The way she said it made my stomach clench. I smiled back, pretending not to hear the storm behind her words. "All right, honey, I'll look it over tonight." She kissed me again and went upstairs, humming that same tune she always did when she thought victory was near. As soon as she was gone, I pulled the papers closer, turned on my reading lamp, and began to read. The first paragraph was exactly what she said it was: insurance policy updates. The second, not so much. By the third paragraph, my pulse was pounding. It wasn't medical insurance. It was a limited power of attorney, a document that would give Vanessa full authority to sell the house if I was deemed medically unfit or unavailable to sign. Clever, very clever. Marcus's name appeared halfway down the page listed as co-beneficiary. His signature space was already signed, his handwriting unmistakable. That was the moment my grief turned to ice. This house was all I had left of Linda. Every brick carried her laughter, every floorboard remembered her steps.
And now the woman wearing her wedding ring wanted to sell it out from under me, with my own son holding the other pen. I poured myself a drink, but my hand was shaking too hard to lift it. The next morning, I drove across town to a small office above a laundromat. The sign still read, Harris and McDougal, attorneys at law. Though only Harris remained an old friend, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who still trusted his gut more than any contract. When I walked in, he stood, shook my hand. Scott Jefferson. Damn, it's been years. You look tired. I feel worse, I said. What's going on? I handed him the folder. I need you to tell me what this really is. He read in silence, his lips thinning with every paragraph. When he finished, he exhaled slow. You're right to be suspicious. This isn't medical paperwork. It's a disguised power of attorney. Once you sign, she can sell your property without another word from you. Even the house, especially the house. It's listed as joint marital property, but since your son's a co-heir, all she'd need is his signature to make it binding. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Christ. Harris set the papers down carefully. How'd you get mixed up with someone like that, Scott? I let out a broken laugh. Love's a hell of a blindfold. He studied me for a moment. Do you want me to dig into her finances? Discreetly, yes. Everything: bank accounts, property records, travel plans. If she so much as breathes near another signature line, I want to know. He nodded. Give me 2 days. Those 2 days stretched into forever. Vanessa went on, playing the perfect wife, bringing me tea, fluffing the pillows, talking about spring renovations. Marcus, meanwhile, grew restless. He avoided my gaze completely now, but I noticed him spending more time on his phone, making hushed calls, packing boxes of his old things under the pretense of clearing space. On the second night, I caught him in the garage, late loading something into the trunk of Vanessa's car. When he saw me in the doorway, he jumped. Couldn't sleep, he muttered. Me neither, I said evenly. He nodded, closed the trunk, and hurried back inside without another word. When Harris finally called, I stepped out onto the porch so Vanessa wouldn't hear. I've got your answer, he said. His tone was grave. Your wife opened a separate account last month under her maiden name, Vanessa L. Cordero. She's transferred nearly $30,000 from your joint savings there in small increments. She also contacted a real estate agent downtown, asking about an early listing on your house. And what? She bought 2 one-way plane tickets to California. Departure next week. My stomach dropped. She's taking Marcus with her, isn't she? Harris hesitated. His name's on the second ticket. I gripped the porch railing until my knuckles whitened. California. That's where Linda and I had once dreamed of retiring, somewhere warm, quiet by the water. Now Vanessa wanted to steal even that dream. She plans to sell the house before she leaves, Harris continued. She's waiting for your signature. Without it, she's stuck. I looked out across the yard at the oak tree Marcus and I planted when he was 12. The rope swing still hung there, swaying slightly in the evening breeze. A memory hit me so hard, I almost staggered the boy, laughing Linda, clapping from the porch. And now that same boy was packing his car to disappear with the woman who'd promised to heal me. The pain was gone now. What replaced it was colder, quieter, cleaner, a kind of purpose I hadn't felt since the army. Don't do anything yet, I told Harris. Let her think I'm still blind. I'll call you when it's time. He hesitated. Scott, whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything illegal, I said flatly, just making sure the truth catches up to them. I hung up and looked at the dark windows of my house, my home. The house Linda built, the house they thought they could steal.
That night, I poured the last of my bourbon and sat in the silence, feeling something inside me harden into resolve. No more confusion, no more questions. That's when I stopped being the victim and started being the hunter. I spent the next 3 days moving like a man walking through glass. Every step quiet, deliberate, careful not to let anything crack before I was ready. By morning, I'd made up my mind. By night, I'd made a plan. I called Reggie first. If there was one man who could help me without asking too many questions, it was him. He'd seen enough in Iraq to know that sometimes survival doesn't look honorable, it just looks necessary. "You sure you want to do this yourself?" he asked after I told him. "I'm not looking for revenge, Reg," I said. "I'm looking for proof." He let out a low whistle. "Proof, huh? That's what every soldier says right before the shooting starts. I'm not pulling a trigger, just setting a trap." He paused, "Then let me help you set it right." That afternoon, Reggie came over in his old pickup toolbox in hand. We worked in silence like we used to, methodical, precise. He installed 2 micro cameras, one behind the bookshelf in my office, another in the corner vent of the living room, both fed straight to a secure drive hidden behind the paneling. "No one'll spot these," he said, wiping his hands. "Not unless they know exactly where to look." "Good," I said. "I need their words, not my suspicions." Reggie studied my face for a long moment. "You got that old look in your eyes again, the one that says you've already accepted the casualties." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." When Vanessa came home that evening, she found me sitting at the kitchen table, the insurance papers laid neatly in front of me. "Baby," she said brightly, "did you finally read them?" "I did," I said, mustering a tired smile. "And you were right, I worry too much. Let's get this over with." Her eyes flickered with something sharp and satisfied before she smoothed it into sweetness. "Of course, honey. I'll grab a pen." While she was in the next room, I slipped my phone onto the table recording app already running. The red dot glowed like a heartbeat. She came back, sat beside me, her perfume heavy and sweet. "Here," she said, sliding the pen into my hand. "Just sign right there." I traced my finger over the line. "Remind me again, this is for the insurance update, right?" She laughed softly. "You're so careful." "Yes, Scott. It's for your medical coverage in case you ever get sick." "In case I get sick," I repeated, looking up at her. "You'd take care of everything." "Of course," she said, smiling that careful, practiced smile. "You can trust me." I signed. Or rather, I pretended to sign, my pen moving across the page without ink, thanks to a transparent film I'd slipped between the sheets earlier. The signature was invisible, but the act looked perfect. "There," I said, handing it back. "All done." She beamed, kissing my cheek. "You always make me feel so safe." If only she knew. Later that night, I found Marcus out in the garage. He was sitting on the hood of his old truck, cigarette burning between his fingers, eyes hollow. For a long moment, I just stood there watching the boy who used to climb trees and beg me to throw the ball one more time. He looked older now, too old. Guilt ages people faster than time. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. He startled slightly, then nodded. "Sure." I leaned against the truck beside him. "You been working lately?" He shook his head. "Not much to work for these days." "Funny," I said softly. "Seems like you got a lot going on." He flinched, exhaled smoke, stared at the floor. "Dad," I held up a hand. "Don't. Not tonight." He turned toward me, eyes wet, jaw trembling. "You know," I nodded slowly. "I know enough." Tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen. I swear to God, Dad, I didn't. She said she loved me, said you'd never understand, that you'd hate me if I told you. I just..." He broke off, shoulders shaking. I let him cry, let the silence stretch between us until the cicadas filled it. Then I said quietly, "Marcus, I've been a lot of things in my life, a soldier, a husband, a father. But I've never been a man without forgiveness. You're my son. Nothing changes that. But you need to understand what's coming next isn't about hate. It's about truth." He looked at me like a drowning man seeing land for the first time. "You're not going to the police." Not yet, I said. I want to hear everything from her own mouth first. Then we'll see who deserves what. He nodded, wiping his face. I'm sorry, Dad. I know, I said, voice low. I just wish you'd been sorry before she touched what's mine. He broke down again. I left him there, shoulders hunched, smoke curling into the dark. Inside, Vanessa was on the couch watching TV. When I walked in, she looked up smiling like the world hadn't just shifted beneath our feet. How was your talk with Marcus? She asked. Good, I said evenly. We cleared the air. That's nice, she said, turning back to the screen. He's been moody lately. Her calmness, her audacity took my breath away. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't guilty. She was in control, or at least she thought she was. I poured myself a drink and sat across from her, pretending to watch the same show. The cameras were rolling now, capturing every tilt of her head, every smile she threw my way like confetti over a grave. She reached over, laid her hand on mine. I'm glad things are okay again, she said softly. Yeah, I replied, meeting her eyes. Me too. She smiled then, the same slow, perfect smile that once made me believe love could heal anything. But that night, it didn't look like love. It looked like the last flicker of a snake before it strikes. The moment she smiled, I knew that smile would be her last weapon against me. Morning came, dressed in the kind of silence that only precedes a storm. The air was heavy, the house too still. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the tick of the clock, felt sharpened, deliberate. Vanessa was already in the kitchen when I came down, humming softly, wearing the same silk robe she'd worn the first night she moved in. Her smile was radiant, almost blinding. Good morning, sweetheart, she said. I made your coffee. Marcus was at the table, head lowered, his eyes dark and restless. There was a duffel bag at his feet. I nodded, poured the coffee, and took a slow sip. Big day today. Vanessa glanced at Marcus before replying. Just errands. A few things to take care of downtown. I smiled. Paperwork. Her eyes flickered. Something like that. Outside tires rolled up the gravel driveway. She didn't notice. Marcus did. He stiffened. A moment later, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said. When I opened the door, the Charleston morning sun hit the badges first. Detective Moore, 2 uniformed officers behind her, and Harris holding a thick folder under his arm. Vanessa's song died in her throat when she saw them. Scott, what's going on? I stepped aside. Come in. Moore nodded politely. Mrs. Jefferson, Mr. Marcus Jefferson, we need to ask you both a few questions regarding the attempted transfer and sale of this property. Vanessa's voice cracked into a laugh. I don't understand. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Harris interrupted, placing the folder on the table. We have documented proof of financial fraud, attempted property misrepresentation, and falsified medical records. He opened the folder, sliding out pages one by one. Here's the fake power of attorney. Here are the transfer receipts for the $30,000. And here, he clicked a small remote. The television screen behind him flickered to life. The video played. Vanessa's smile vanished. On screen, her own face filled the frame, leaning close to me as I signed the document, her voice crystal clear. Just sign there, sweetheart. It's for your medical coverage. Then the next clip, her whispering to Marcus in the hallway about the sale, about leaving before the old man realizes. Her hand flew to her mouth. You recorded me. I met her eyes. I recorded the truth. Marcus stood abruptly, face pale. Dad, please, Detective Moore raised a hand. Mr. Jefferson, sit down. He sank back into his chair, shaking. Vanessa turned on him, eyes wild. You said you handled everything. You said, enough, Moore snapped. Save it for your statement. Vanessa lunged for the papers as if tearing them apart could erase them. One of the officers caught her wrist, firm but calm. She tried to twist free, screaming now, the sound brittle and desperate. You set me up, Scott. You evil old bastard. After everything I did for you, I stood there still, hands folded in front of me. You did this for yourself, I said quietly. You and the boy I thought I raised. Marcus broke then, his face crumpled, tears spilling as he buried his head in his hands. I didn't want this, Dad. She made me. She said we could start over, that it was for us. I looked at him, my chest hollow. No, son, she didn't make you. She just showed you what was already inside you. He sobbed harder, mumbling apologies that came too late. The officers began reading them their rights. Harris gathered the documents, sliding them back into his briefcase. Vanessa's sobs turned into curses. Marcus just stared at the floor, silent.
When it was over, when the sirens had faded down the road and the dust settled back onto the gravel, I was left standing in the wreckage of my own house. No shouting, no violence, just the aftermath. Harris lingered for a moment at the doorway. "Scott, you all right?" I looked around the empty chairs, the cold coffee, the ghost of my wife's photo watching from the mantel. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm all right." But I wasn't, not really. I walked back to the kitchen and sat where Vanessa had been just an hour before. The robe she'd worn was still draped over the chair, the faint scent of her perfume clinging to it, sweet, poisonous, unforgettable. I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered more to myself than anyone. "You two already killed this family. I'm just here to bury it properly." The house was silent again. The kind of silence that follows judgment. Outside, the oak tree swayed gently in the wind, the same tree Marcus and I had planted now, shading the ruins of what we once called home. I thought catching them would bring peace. Justice had come, yes. The truth was out, and the law had taken its course. But as I sat there alone in that hollow house, I realized something deeper. Even after justice came, peace didn't. It's strange how quiet a house can be after the storm passes. No shouting, no footsteps, no lies, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of wood settling into its old bones. For the first time in months, my home felt like mine again. But peace, I learned, isn't the same as silence. Marcus took a plea deal, 6 months of house arrest, 2 years probation, and mandatory counseling for emotional dependency and manipulation. The lawyer said his cooperation helped his case, but watching my son stand in that courtroom, head bowed while they read the charges, felt like losing him twice. He tried to meet my eyes once. I couldn't hold the look. Vanessa was gone before the trial ended. Word around town said she emptied what little remained in her secret account and fled West California, maybe. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Some ghosts don't deserve to be chased. The house, though, the house demanded to be mended. So I rebuilt it, one nail, one breath, one long night at a time. Replaced the broken locks, repainted the hallway she used to sneak through, fixed the door to Marcus's old room, though I couldn't bring myself to step inside for weeks. Some nights I'd sit in the living room and just stare at the wall where the hidden camera once was. I never took it down. It still blinked its small red light in the corner, quiet, patient. Funny thing, that same camera that once destroyed my world now guards my peace. It doesn't record anymore. I just keep it there like a scar, a reminder of what happens when you stop looking. Reggie comes by sometimes, brings a thermos of coffee, and that grin that hasn't aged since Iraq. We sit on the porch in our old jackets, talking like soldiers do, half truth, half silence. One morning he asked, "You ever think about forgiveness, brother?" I stared into my mug, watching the steam twist and fade. "Every damn day." "And I forgave him," I said. "But that's not the same as trusting him." Reggie nodded slow. "You're a better man than me. If it was my boy..." "It was my boy," I cut in, "and that's what makes it harder. You don't just stop loving your own blood. You just stop expecting anything from it." We didn't talk much after that, just sat in the still air, the cicadas singing somewhere far off. When Marcus's therapist called a month later, she said he was improving, remorseful, trying to understand what Vanessa had done to him, to both of us. I told her I was glad, but when she asked if I'd visit him, I said maybe. I never did. You can forgive from a distance. Sometimes that's the only way to survive it. Life found a rhythm again, mornings with black coffee and the newspaper, afternoons fixing things that didn't really need fixing,
Evenings spent reading old letters from Linda, the only woman who ever truly knew me. But nights are trickier. Some nights I still wake at 2 a.m. hearing things that aren't there. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's guilt wearing soft shoes. I sit up, turn on the monitor, the one still linked to that old hallway camera. Most nights it shows nothing but shadows and stillness, and I tell myself that's enough, until that one night. The house was quiet like always. I was half asleep in my chair when I heard it faint, deliberate. Footsteps, not the clumsy shuffle of old wood, not the creak of settling beams, real footsteps, slow measured crossing the hall just beyond my door. I froze every instinct from my soldier days, waking like a reflex.
On the monitor, the light from the hallway camera flickered to life. And then I saw it, a shadow moving past the doorway, the same rhythm, the same gait I thought I'd never hear again. Then one night, I heard footsteps again. The same slow steps down the hallway. The footsteps stopped outside my door. For a long moment the house held its breath. Then came a soft knock, 3 slow taps like the past asking permission to enter. "Dad, it's me." Marcus's voice. Older, somehow rasped by shame. I sat still for a moment watching the hallway monitor. The shadow on the screen wasn't a ghost. This time it was flesh and blood. My son. When I opened the door, he stood there clutching a worn duffel bag, thinner than I remembered, eyes hollow but sober. The boy was gone. What stood before me was a man carrying the wreckage of what he'd done. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, like he was afraid the walls themselves might reject him. His eyes darted toward the corner of the room where the old camera still blinked faintly. He noticed. Of course he did. "I thought you'd taken that thing down," he murmured. "I thought you'd stopped walking these halls," I replied. He gave a sad smile. "Fair." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same one where everything had fallen apart, the same table where I'd signed that cursed paper. He took a deep breath. "Dad, I've been in therapy. I cut all ties with her. Vanessa. Haven't heard from her since the trial. He stopped, swallowing hard. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted to look you in the eye and say I'm sorry. For all of it. For her. For what I became. For not being your son when you needed me to be." His voice cracked, and for the first time in years I saw the boy again, the one who used to climb trees, who once believed his father could fix anything. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I reached under the table, opened the drawer, and took out a small wooden box. The same box that once held Linda's wedding ring, now home to a different kind of truth. I slid it across the table toward him. He looked down, confused. "What is this?" "Open it," I said. Inside lay the old camera, black scratched, still holding the faint weight of everything it had seen. He stared at it for a long time, his hands trembling. "Keep it," I told him, "so you'll remember that truth always finds a way to show itself. You can lie to the world, to yourself, even to your father." But that little eye never blinked. Neither did mine. Tears welled in his eyes. He closed the box gently, as if it might burn him. "I don't deserve your kindness," he whispered. "It's not kindness," I said quietly. "It's mercy, and mercy's heavier than hate." He nodded slowly, stood, and for a moment I thought he might reach out to hug me. He didn't. He just said thank you and walked out into the fading light. I watched him go until the truck's taillights disappeared down the dirt road. Then I turned back toward the camera in the corner, my silent witness, my curse, my salvation. Later that evening, I sat in front of my own recording setup, the one Reggie helped me wire years ago, and pressed record. The red light blinked on. My reflection stared back, older now, lined with too many winters, but steady. My revenge wasn't sending them to prison. I said, my voice calm, almost tender. It was living long enough to watch them face themselves in the mirror. I leaned closer to the lens, eyes steady. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply surviving with your dignity intact. For a moment I just sat there breathing, feeling the weight of the years lift from my chest. Then I reached out and turned off the camera. The room fell quiet. The late afternoon light spilled through the window, warm and forgiving, catching on the dust motes that danced in the still air. Outside, the oak tree swayed softly. The same one Marcus and I planted all those years ago. Its branches reached wide golden in the sunset. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since Linda died, the silence didn't hurt. It just was. The camera didn't just catch their betrayal, it recorded my rebirth. You know, people keep asking me if I ever forgave them. Truth is, forgiveness isn't something you give to make them feel better. It's what you do so the pain doesn't own you anymore. I don't hate my son, I don't even hate her, but I learned that love without honesty is just a slow kind of poison. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: protect your peace, protect your dignity, because in the end, revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about standing tall, breathing steady, and saying, "You didn't break me." Now tell me in the comments, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same?